We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. I'm very excited to have with me the one and only Jane Muir today. How are you doing, Jane?
Fine, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly? I really hope I did.
Well, close enough.
What is the right pronunciation?
Muir.
Muir. Okay, I was off, but now we have it on the record for the correct pronunciation. Jane, I have my coffee with a whole load of whiskey in hand. And what are you drinking today?
Well, really, it's buttered coffee, but it's still going to give me some energy so that I can tell this story with a lot of pizzazz.
Pizzazz. I love the buttered coffee. I'll try it one day. And I'm in a pizzazz mood. Tell us and all of our listeners about your craziest client horror story.
Okay, so this was a case where I was representing a group of older Jewish guys that were retired from New York down to South Florida.
As a Jewish guy from New York, I'm already excited.
Oh, they were a bunch of characters for sure. And their hobby was to go to the horse races at Calder Racecourse up in North Miami area and bet on the ponies. And so one day they were having one of their typical days of gambling and talking and hanging out. And they decided, wouldn't it be a good idea for them to invest in a Chinese restaurant? So they...
You know, the best ideas happen when you're hanging out, gambling, and horse racing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure alcohol must have been involved.
or buttered coffee, perhaps.
Or buttered coffee, who knows? So they had some friend or business colleague that already had a Chinese restaurant, and this person was Chinese, and her sibling ran a Chinese food distribution company. So there are very special menu items at a Chinese restaurant, like you might not be able to find at an ordinary grocery store. So they would import these unique things, certain kinds of mushrooms or certain kinds of vegetables from China and supply different Chinese restaurants. So one sibling had the distribution of the food and the other sibling had the retail outlet of the food. And when my clients decided to partner with the sibling with the restaurants, they didn't worry too much about having a contract or anything like that.
I just want to point out, I've done almost 100 episodes of Client Horror Stories, and in my experience, from 100 episodes, the people that tend to not worry about doing a contract tend to be the people who are like 21 years old and just doing it out of experience. But these are a bunch of retired guys.
Yes.
Like, had they not learned that contracts are useful?
I guess not. Well, in any case, their business deal didn't go so well. And from their perspective, their partner was not being truthful with them about how much money was being generated by their venture. And that the partner was marking up the expenses associated with the food, which was to the benefit of her brother and to the detriment of her partners.
Interesting. Let's pause on that. A couple of different things on that. First, what happened to for them to realize it? Usually you don't even, if I invest in a restaurant, I wouldn't even be looking how much do they pay for their spaghetti or chicken chow fung, whatever it is.
I don't really know why they believed that they were getting gouged. But
so they thought they were getting gouged, so they then looked into it, and they realized that the food being bought from the brother they're being overcharged for it.
Overcharged. That was their belief. And they believed that other restaurants were paying less for the same products than their restaurant that they'd invested in.
Okay.
So it's been so long that I'm not even really remembering if we had any solid evidence of this, because the business was run in a very old-fashioned way, paper records and pencil written checkbooks and ledgers, that kind of old school thing. So they didn't necessarily know for sure. It was kind of the kind of thing that they would have had to have a forensic accountant look at to prove. So the gentleman that I represented, they hired us jointly. And I have a real soft spot for older people. I just love old people. I think they're so cute. And so I thought, oh, these cute old guys, they're going to be so much fun to represent. Well, it kind of went sideways, because eventually the two guys wanted to delegate to one of their friends most of the client contact with us. And luckily,
so there's 3 Jewish guys. We're going into 2 owners, and of the 3 guys that thought they were being ripped off, two of them thought they were being ripped off. They just didn't want to.
They just didn't want to deal with it.
They want to step back, so they said, "Okay, one of you work with Jane."
Right. Exactly. Okay. So the one guy, we had them all sign a joint representation agreement. Thank goodness, because I was fresh from law school, and I had remembered that when you represent clients together, you have to make sure that they're all aware in writing that anything that any of them tell me is open for all of them to know, and that I cannot keep secrets between any of them. And if they have a conflict between them, then I couldn't represent anyone against the other, right?
But actually, by the way, as a side note, I didn't know that. Like, I know about the famous attorney-client privilege, but I see if you have multiple clients together, there's no privilege in the group together.
Exactly. The attorney-client privilege umbrella covers the group instead of just one person.
Got it.
Okay. So we've always been very careful about that issue.
Okay.
But in this particular case, we had made sure that in the engagement agreement, it said, no secrets among you. If you have a conflict, we have to withdraw, all that kind of thing. That's informed consent in writing that you have to get. And we all get tested on the MPRE to make sure we know about that. So thank God we had that, because the one guy that was delegated the work of interacting with us lawyers,
yes,
he ended up not being entirely truthful with his partners. Right.
I love the multiple layers of deceit.
So many layers.
So what was he not being truthful regarding with the partners?
To be honest, I don't recall the precise issue that it was, but how it came up is that I wrote a letter explaining the status of the negotiation.
Okay.
And delivered this letter to all of the partners, to the 3 of them. And then we got a call from this one guy chewing me out, saying that I had divulged attorney-client privileged information to the other 2 partners. And I was like, no, sir, we represent you jointly. And that means everything that you've ever said to us is open to your partners too.
Okay, so interesting in a few ways. First, I want to point out what he chewed you out about was the exact same thing I had a question about 5 minutes ago. So interesting learning here. Laymen, non-lawyers, even educated ones, and I'm overeducated, overexperienced, don't understand that attorney-client privilege means it's open between the group of clients together. I see. So your report to all of them revealed some detail. It was like, my partners can't know that, and he didn't connect the dots to realize attorney-client privilege wouldn't cover that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So then we had to write a follow-up letter explaining that no, in fact, everything we've done is exactly per the rules. And if there arises a conflict among you, here in our engagement letter, it says we cannot proceed if you have a conflict among you. And ultimately, we were able to resolve the matter at mediation. So everybody went their separate ways with a settlement agreement.
Oh, so I see. So because of you revealing that information and he got angry, you're like, there's some sort of secret contract between you guys, which then triggered mediation with the owner and the brother as well. And then everyone got something and the issue wrapped up. Basically,
yeah, because you had oral agreements between all these parties. There was oral agreements among the three gentlemen from New York. There were oral agreements between the brother and sister. There were oral agreements across between the investors in the Chinese restaurant and the owners of the Chinese restaurant. It was an oral agreement nightmare. And finding out what had really happened was also a challenge between the paper records that were very difficult to
sparse
kind of translate. Some were literally in Chinese. And the memories of these elder gentlemen who were retired weren't very clear. So it was a real mess of a case.
By the way, I often observe that there's this funny quality about memory that people tend to remember everything in their own favor, where they look the best. So I'm sure everyone's memory of this situation was, I'm the good guy and the other person is the bad guy.
You guessed it.
Okay, interesting story. Let's talk about some lessons from this story. So one lesson that we've already covered is non-lawyers don't really understand attorney-client privilege as it applies to groups. Another lesson is people don't read the contracts, because your contract clearly said that. But these guys were like, yeah, I'll sign with that reading. A third lesson is it's really risky to just make oral promises.
It's insane. I mean, the problem is expectations have to be clarified from the beginning. It needs to be completely understood what your rights and responsibilities are. And the Florida statutes do define rights and responsibilities of owners of the different kinds of companies that we have. And they include some dispute resolution details, but it's very fuzzy and debatable. And that's not something you want in a business setting. You want clarity and precision so that everybody can know what they're getting into and what they're going to need to do in order to fulfill their obligations to the group or to the partners.
I agree. Okay, there are a few more lessons from here that are worth mentioning. Keeping secrets from your business partners is that's another interesting one. Like, an unexpected twist in the story was the breakdown between the three of them, because I thought it'd be like three good Jewish guys against these sketchy Chinese restaurant owners, but it actually turns out the Jewish guys are sketchy themselves. Why? Like, you're three investing in this thing together. What wouldn't you want your partners to know?
Yeah, I wish I could remember in greater detail what the issue was that they had not made clear amongst themselves. But it was enough that the one delegated to speak with us was outraged and threatened us with a bar grievance. And I was just shocked. I was like, what do you mean that this was not shared with your partners? Like, you have a fiduciary duty to them, and I have a fiduciary duty to all of you. So you have to disclose anything you find out to your partners. And that's really the job you took on when you decided to represent them with the lawyers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Other interesting lessons here is people you work with or invest in, you might want to look carefully if any of the key business relationships are also family members, because I think that is a key detail here, because if there's a random provider from outer space that I'm just buying, my General Chow's chicken from, then okay, random provider. But when it's my brother, that by definition increases the probability that something sketchy might be going on.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. And the other thing I would say is that the family relationship can supersede the business partnership in loyalty.
Good point.
Because if you're loyal to your sibling, I mean, you're gonna lie for your sibling. You'll put the siblings' concerns ahead of your business partners, or there's a risk that you might.
Yeah, that is a good point. I think for most people, unless the numbers are huge, if it's billions of dollars, it might be different. But like, until the numbers are ginormous, the first loyalty is probably to the family. And it's also interesting that they're Chinese. I spent a lot of my career managing companies outside of the US, let's say what we could call non-Anglo-Saxon cultures. And in my experience, in non-Anglo-Saxon cultures, family loyalty is much, much stronger than in Anglo-Saxon cultures. So this could be another risk factor piling on top of it. Oh, non-Anglo-Saxon team, like family team bonding, they're likely to have a very strong relationship between them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay, and then we also covered at the start of the story, the don't make a deal when you're gambling and drinking alcohol.
For sure. Maybe call a lawyer before you get into an investment situation. I don't know. You could maybe have someone draw up a contract that sets some parameters that require the distributor to give you their best prices. That would be reasonable to do. Charge you the best price that they're offering in that geographic region. Because, I mean, now that I think about it, reflecting on if I were going to give a group this advice today, I would have definitely required there to be a written contract with the food distributor, in addition to a written contract to address the investment in this restaurant.
So that is a good point. I've sold a few companies, and something like when you're going through the process of selling a company, something the acquirer always looks into are the internal contracts between the employees and the outsourcers and everyone involved. Those are key factors as the due diligence before an acquisition. But what's interesting here is if these people want to invest in these people, like it's applying the same sort of principle. Like, it's not just, oh wow, they have a successful restaurant, we think it can make a lot of money. It's like, okay, now let's go do our diligence and make sure that that there are contracts between the key players involved there.
Exactly. You would need a contract with the sibling who was the manager of the restaurant, so that
Yes.
she wasn't she couldn't just depart the operation and fail to manage the restaurant effectively. Yeah. For sure, that key person needs to be locked in. You would need some kind of defined investment agreement. Like sometimes people, when they invest, will have the option to convert their investment from equity into a loan or vice versa.
Convertible debt.
Right.
Or a convertible note.
And then they could have gotten their money back at a profit in spite of the belief, whether it was true or not, that they were getting gouged on the prices for food. But there were just so many ways that they did not think through their original investment that led to this conflict. And along with the personality traits, gambling, to me, it looks a little bit like they were gambling on this restaurant.
I like that interpretation. Okay, so here could be a different possible interpretation. If someone invests in something, you don't really know how much money the person has. If someone gives you an investment of $100,000, it could be this is their life savings and they're betting their future on your company. It could also be they have $100 million in the bank and this is like a vacation. They'll take one less vacation and use it because it'll be more fun for them to invest in your company than take this vacation. So it could be that like they're drinking, having fun, betting on horses, and they're not thinking about it like an investment, nor even a gamble. They could just be thinking about it. This is pure fun. Like rather than throw away the $20,000, whatever it is, on a trip, just say, it's fun to give it to these crazy Chinese guys and see what happens.
That's not the scenario that I recall. This one, they were on tight budgets. They're not
tight budgets.
Yeah, okay. They were not 100 millionaires as you're describing. Because the other nightmare about this client was that they asked us to do a lot of this work and wait to be paid until we resolve the case.
Oh, I see.
So here's
you're withholding facts from me about this story.
Yeah, this is the kicker. So when all was said and done and we sent them the bill, it was like $50,000, which at that time was a lot of money that we had invested in time in this case. And they complained about the bill and said that they shouldn't owe us anything at all. So even though we had an engagement letter and even though we'd done all this work, because we had extended so much credit and the guys were on retirement income and Social Security.
Oh, no.
There's no way to collect from someone because you can't reach their retirement assets or their homestead or their Social Security. So we ended up working for free for these nightmare clients.
No.
It was just awful. And ever since then, the way I've avoided this in the future, from that point forward, was now I require a retainer to be held in trust. And it's an evergreen retainer. You've heard that term before, right?
Not in regards to retainers, but I imagine it means like once your retainer is used up, they have to like refill it for the next part.
Exactly. But even more aggressively, they have to refill it every month. So they get a bill, and let's say the retainer is $10,000. They get a bill for $3,000. They have to pay that $3,000 every month to keep it always at that $10,000.
Yes, I see.
And that's been very helpful.
Okay. So this is an interesting, a whole other level of horror that you got zero from this. Wow. I like the evergreen strategy in order to prevent that from happening again. The early 20th century writer G.K. Chesterton has an interesting observation that's sometimes called Chesterton's fence, and that basically means there's like a fence between you and your neighbor, and you buy the house. Never take down the fence before you first learn why the fence was first put up. In other words, don't change rules, policies, how things are done until you learn the reason why it's there. The reason why I thought of Chesterton's fence now in this context is charging a retainer, super standard for lawyers, but I could see young, eager lawyers, you need some money, you want to get new clients. You're like, nah, we don't need a retainer. I trust them. They're nice. I love old Jewish men. But guess what? Before saying we're not going to take a retainer, you have to understand why there's the best practice to always have a retainer.
Right. And this was a time where we were charging an ultra low retainer. So we might have been paid $2,500 for $50,000 worth of work.
Ooh.
It was awful. It was so bad.
Wow. Okay. So we've got a whole bunch of lessons. I'm trying to extract more lessons from this.
Oh yeah.
Here's another one. As a Jewish guy, I can say, be wary of like these old Jewish men. There's this rule that you're kind of allowed to make fun of the groups you're a member of, and as a member of that group, I'm giving myself permission to, or let's say a younger. I'm not yet old. Hopefully, I'm not yet old. In a few decades, I'll be retired. But like this serious version of that point is there are lots of people that just come off as like cute and nice. These like cute little old men. You began the episode by saying
I did. Cute little old men. They were so cute, and I just thought, Grandpa, Santa Claus. So sweet, so kind, so wise, wise older gentlemen. They would never stiff me on my bill.
Never would. Okay. Wow. So the wisdom has taught us that don't judge a book by its cover.
Don't judge a book by its cover. That is the lesson, right? So now I have to, I feel like I have kind of a soft heart by nature. So I have to filter through the lens of don't get taken advantage of by the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay. This is really interesting. Important lesson, but like, I might not use the right wording for this, so my apologies in advance if it doesn't come off in the positive spirit I intend the question I'm about to say. But like, since you are like nice and generous and you want to help people by your nature, but you have to like put up this wall of sorts, how do you stop yourself from turning into a bitch? And by that I mean like there's this, like, I personally, for me, I see myself as a nice guy, is like, I know I have to put up this wall and this wall and this wall, but you kind of like stop yourself from being nice again and again and again. You do that so much, you kind of become a not nice person. Like you become one of them, and it's hard to draw the line or make the balance. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's such a good point. Well, for me, we just have to have hard rules. And the rules are our minimum retainer is X. We don't accept any clients that are not able to make that payment. If we also refer people to legal aid organizations. I do a lot of fundraising and support for nonprofit legal organizations. And so my hope is that I can send these sweet people that I feel sorry for, that I want to help, to those organizations, and then they get vetted, because there have been times where someone has come to me for help that seems like they're in great need, and they they play their tiny violin about their awful situation, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through this awful situation. I really feel for you. Let me give you the names of 3 different legal aid organizations that may be able to help you under these circumstances, because it sounds like you're in terrible need. Because the worst is to extend credit or do something on a contingency basis that's questionable, where you're not as wealthy as the person you're helping. Like this person has like a annual income in the high 6 figures, and you're like a regular person earning regular income, bending over backwards for someone who isn't deserving of charity because they're not at the poverty line, that the way they've explained themselves to you.
Yeah, people often misrepresent themselves on purpose to their advantage. And in these situations where you're gonna like hire someone expensive, you would understand why a lot of people would misrepresent themselves as not having much money, even if they really do.
Right. And I've started asking for tax returns. Like when people,
really? No.
Yeah, because people will represent themselves as indigent, and really they're earning a really seriously good living. It's just that in their own minds they don't see themselves as wealthy, and they see themselves as like middle class, and the way they look at their situation, they feel like they're the victim, and so victims need to be rescued. And gosh, I did become a lawyer because I love helping people, but it's hard to let yourself be the hero for someone who really could have afforded an attorney, really.
Yeah. Wow. Me thinking about it in real time, maybe this is a reason why the concept that lawyers have of pro bono work exists, because maybe it's you have hard and fast rules so you're not taking advantage of, such as evergreen retainers, etc. But then also you say, okay, 10% of my time I will follow the hard and fast rule of explicitly doing it for free for these people who really do deserve it for free, because that could be a way to reconcile in your mind. Like, it could be a way to use my earlier language, to stop yourself from turning into a bitch. Because if you say, I'm going to follow the hard and fast rule of using 10% of my time to help to do work for free for people that deserve it, then you keep that human aspect to it as well.
Exactly. And the client has to prove that they are in genuine need, because that's the risk. There's a book I read called The Sociopath Next Door.
Oh my God, and I love the name.
Have you read this book?
No, I never heard of it before.
It's tremendous. It is so good. And what I love about it is it explains why people sometimes behave in a way that is really detrimental to their counterpart. Like the description, I'll give you a quick Cliff's Notes of this book, is that in every human quality, there's a bell curve, right? Height,
yes,
or intelligence, or
yes,
anything at all, bell curve. So one of the things that falls on a bell curve is empathy. And so at the bottom of the bell curve of empathy, you have these people who will torture kittens and, eat their victims, and, Jeffrey Dahmer kind of people that are serial killers and genuinely evil. And they just, they have so little empathy that it doesn't hurt their feelings to watch someone else be in pain. In fact, it excites them in a pathological way. And then on the high end of the empathy curve, you've got these people who are so caring and understanding that they practically can read your mind, like your amazing guidance counselors, your parents, your teachers, that kind of person who just exudes warmth and understanding. That's the higher end of the bell curve. And then the rest of us are all kind of in the middle. But there's this whole area of the bell curve on the lower side where people are on the low end of empathy, but they're still in a normal range. And those are the people who act with incredible selfishness, and they really will just do anything that benefits them to your detriment. And I had to read this book because I'm so fortunate. I grew up in a family that always values truth and fairness. And so becoming a litigator in Miami, which is the fraud capital of the United States.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, we are the capital of Medicare fraud, mortgage fraud, any kind of fraud. We are the capital. And it just shocked me. Why would people be so selfish and unkind and willing to trample on other people's rights and things that people should be entitled to, like self-determination kind of thing, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So now
they really want to pursue their own happiness.
Right, they do. But that's the line. That's what the law does. It draws a line between the pursuit of your own happiness and the interference with someone else's pursuit of their happiness.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Far too many people, unfortunately, lack empathy. By the way, I don't think I told you this. I actually wrote a book and published a book on empathy.
Really?
The Scorpion and the Frog, an exercise in empathy. And
I've heard that story.
Yeah. So you know the Scorpion and Frog story, the Aesop's fable, where the scorpion goes on the frog back across the river. Why should I take you? You'll kill me. And he says, no, if I do that, we'll both die. Oh yeah, you're right. Then he does that. Why? It's in my nature. What I did is I took that story and I retold that story 29 times, keeping the same facts. It's the exact same story. All I did is before each story, I added in the backstory you don't know. And that completely changes the moral and meaning and who's good and who's bad. So in one of them, the scorpion's on drugs, and the other one he's getting revenge. The frog is getting revenge against him, and the other one is a spy and has to kill him, and so on. So and I call it an exercise in empathy, because if you take the exact same facts, like the scorpion frog facts, the facts of the story, you're a litigator, you go to court, and the judge reads all the contracts, all the documentation, all the record. Like, there are the facts. You need to construct the backstory in order to figure out what happened. But different backstories that you'll never know. You're trying to figure it out and reconstruct it. But depending on the backstory you come up with, changes everything about it, including it might even reverse the morality, the who's good and who's bad. Are you sure it's the scorpions is the bad one? Maybe this was a setup, or like this, or a plan, and so on.
Well, that sounds very interesting, Morgan. I'd love to read that book.
If we can have our own book club. Yeah. You can put a link in the episode notes. But
sure.
But it's interesting. By the way, I've never really thought about sociopathy before. An implication of what you're saying about the sociopath next door is that a sociopath is kind of someone at the low end of the empathy scale. And I never thought about it before, but that definition kind of makes sense. Like, if I truly am in the 0.0001% lowest empathy, people like, wow, who cares if the kitten is in pain, because I'll fun torturing it.
Yeah, well, that's the theory by the author, that she believes that explains why people will, undercut you at work, or take something that doesn't, like, steal your lawn gnome or little things that are hurtful to a person that you can't understand. Like, someone will key your car in the parking lot of Target because they feel that you took their parking spot. All that kind of behavior is inspired by this kind of low empathy.
Sometimes I think to myself that there needs to be a movement to make people more empathic. Like, I remember 10, 15 years ago, they started like teaching mindfulness, and now it's like a whole movement, and they teach it in schools. When I was a kid, that word didn't exist. And yeah. And now, and I think we're ripe at a right era in the universe where they need to start teaching empathy in some sort. Something I like about my method in the Scorpion and Frog book is basically, by myself, to reveal a little bit too much about myself, is by my nature. It's in my nature. By my nature, I'm a low empathy guy. Like, I was always a math, science nerd, robot, good or bad. Let's look at the facts. But life has taught me the overwhelming importance of being empathic, like as a partner, like as a boss, as a friend. You have to be like, who wants to be friends with someone that's like, no, you're wrong. Like this, you want your friend to be able to see it from your point of view, even when you're in the wrong. So I basically went through an exercise over 15 years. I did it on my own to try to teach myself empathy. And as part of that, I came up with my own method of saying, okay, when people are acting really stupid, let me see if I can invent a backstory in which they're not stupid. And, oh, wait, maybe this thing is happening that I don't know about. So in this way, I'm a little bit of a self-taught empath. And sometimes I think, someone should get to teach low empathy people how to be empathic.
I think that's a great idea. Don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Ooh.
Right?
Yes. That is right. It's hard to walk in other people's shoes. So
it is. I grew up valuing accuracy very much. Like, my family are all lawyers, and so being I
can just imagine the dinner time table conversation when you're a kid.
Oh yeah, my mom was a circuit judge. My father's a lawyer. I come from a long line of lawyers, and really, I think imagination gives you empathy too. Like, reading stories about different kinds of people, all different areas of the world and socioeconomic backgrounds and time periods, and that kind of imagining yourself in, medieval England or in some kind of ancient Rome or ancient Egypt, or some setting that's really completely different, or, science fiction, right? Like Ender's Game kind of books. It really helps to, imagine yourself in a completely different way. Like, pretend you're not male, you're not female. Pretend you're older or younger. Pretend you've had, a life of severe lack or extreme wealth. The ability to imagine where you might be if you had a different background is, I think, so important and can help with that empathy.
I had never thought about how imagination gives you empathy, but I agree with that. And that also was right to the heart of the thesis of the Scorpion Frog book. You basically need to imagine the backstories that could explain and even justify their behavior. And that is fundamentally a very creative act of imagination. I think another thing that gives you empathy is age, because something that age and just living as an adult teaches you is that the world is strange and people are strange. And there are all these things that people do that when I was a really intellectual and really smart 18-year-old, I'd be like, no way would anyone ever do that. That's irrational, like in a very obvious way. And like, even the really stupid people, that makes no sense and they wouldn't do it. And guess what? Like, different people have different logic, different facts, different inputs, different incentives, different preferences, different priorities. So people come to wildly different conversations and it's different conclusions. And not just that, like these things happen that like you literally don't think are possible. When you're a kid, you're like, no, this sort of technology is literally impossible. And then like 20 years later, that impossible technology exists. And
Well, I used to watch Star Trek growing up, so all this stuff was very obvious to me. Like it's no surprise to me that we have MRIs and you can like look through someone's flesh and see what's going on in their insides, and AI makes perfect sense. Computer, show me, show me the Great Gatsby, and virtual reality. All these things were sort of. We would watch Star Trek every night. The Next Generation. So
my parents love Star Trek. My mom was a fan of the original series, and my dad was a fan of the Next Generation. So I watched both of those growing up. I'm still waiting for someone to invent the holodeck.
I know. Well, have you ever tried the virtual reality goggles that Meta makes? These
not yet.
It's cool. It's cool. I have a pair, and I was using them to work out. And there's a program where you can basically you put these things in your hands, and it turns into a bat, and you pop balloons in a kind of dance pattern, and that's a workout. Yeah, it's really fun.
That's really cool, and I guess that is something comparable to the holodeck. You don't like see it in the walls, but you see it
you can't touch it like that.
Yeah, but
it is very like immediate.
I remember TNG episodes where like characters would fall in love with characters on the holodeck, and now those meta glasses combined with AI and GPTs, we're not that far from being able to fall in love with characters on a holodeck.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I saw video, Esther Perel, this relationship expert.
Yes.
She talks about that it's problematic because people can invent a perfect AI partner that isn't going to have any friction with them because they'll just say whatever you want, anything you say. And human relationships, we're going to have friction because of just what you said, the different experiences and priorities and beliefs and rationale. That's what makes us human.
Now, okay, so we're coming closer to making the holodeck and falling in love with the holograms reality. Now what Elon Musk needs to invent now is the beam me up, the teleporter. That's what.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cool. I really hate flying for a long period. Like, I prefer not to go anywhere farther than 4 hours away because sitting in the plane is just so exhausting and taxing to be stuck in this little box. But I really would love to just appear in London or something without having to sit around. I feel like it's coming.
I feel like we're still far away from that. On the other hand, a minute ago I said the world is strange, including like some technologies you never would have imagined would be possible, like actually happening. So I don't rule anything out, and I don't judge.
Well, aren't we all living in a simulation anyway? And electrons can pop in and out of existence all over the world, the universe. So if an electron can do it, why couldn't we?
Yeah. By the way, when you're talking about the hologram, I was thinking of the exact same thing about the famous physics experiment. Is it the double slit experiment? I think maybe where it's like when you split an electron in half, and like when one moves or does something, like the other one that's like miles away is doing the exact same thing. So like things are happening that we don't understand, which means we should keep an open mind, even with the drunk old Jewish guys at the racetrack. Keep an open mind.
Way to bring it full circle.
Yeah. It's remember Ronald Reagan had the line "trust but verify" in the same sort of vein. Don't judge, but sign the contract.
Sign a contract, right? And people who aren't similar in cultural background or personality, they can have very successful businesses together. Like, there's a book I love called Traction, and it talks about how really they're usually not one lone wolf entrepreneur that starts a major company and becomes incredibly successful. It's usually a duo. And the examples they give are like Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Like Jobs had nothing to imagine or sell without Woz in engineering the computers. Or Bill Gates and Matt Bomer. Bomer was the big sales guy, and he had the people.
Steve
Ballmer. Thank you. Matt Bomer is an actor. Sorry. Steve Ballmer was the one who was able to get the team organized and motivated and sell the software, and that allowed Bill Gates to be in the background, like tinkering with the software. Because I'm told, or what I've heard about him, is that he's not so interested really in organizing people or talking really to anyone. Like he puts together these think weeks where he's just alone in a cabin with a bunch of books and reading materials, and that's his way of creating. So these duos are what really find that they can be really successful, and they have to be very different people, because if you have two of a kind, then the strengths are overloaded on the same buckets. You've got to fill in all the different strengths with multiple people and all their backgrounds in history.
Okay, interesting. So, by the way, that book Traction, a friend recommended it a week ago. It's sitting in that pile right.
Oh, it's tremendous. You're gonna love it. It's so good.
Yeah, it's So I've not yet read it. However, I have a off the cuff analysis of what you said that will tie back into the story, so we can then wrap up the episode. Which is, a few years ago, I was considering starting another company, and I said, should I found it alone? Should I have a partner? And I said, let me look at the big tech startups and see how many founders they had. And by the way, I haven't read this book yet, so I didn't know this analysis you told me. And the conclusion I can do is interesting, but slightly different, which is I realized that every single successful tech company has, or the unicorns, etc., as of when I did the analysis a few years ago, has two founders. So I agree with the duo. And I realized even the ones that you think have one founder really had two. Like everyone knows Steve from Apple, but you always think of Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg. But it's really Mark Zuckerberg and the Brazilian guy, Eduardo Saverin, that he then threw out. So even the ones you think are one person really are two. Then I said, okay, is there a pattern I see among the two? And what I realized, the conclusion I came to is, of the two, it's very consistently, one is the sales visionary outgoing type, and then the other is the operations, figure out how to actually make it happen. Like Wozniak figured out how to make the computers while Jobs got the world excited about it. And
totally.
every single power duo is has that same sort of dynamic. And then when I realized that, I realized, wait, this is the reason why successful companies tend to be led by the CEO and the COO. It's a very comparable division of skills. And then I realized it kind of feels like a marriage, because in every successful marriage or couple that I know of, in my social circle at least, one of the two of them is the outgoing, let's do this, let's move here, let's do it. And the other is I'm not going to pay all the bills, make sure we have enough money for this and this, and make sure the house is all locked up. And so I think you need a separate set of skills, but in this very consistent way. One needs the more CEO-ish, one needs the more COO-ish. And I feel like that feels like a healthy division of skills, healthy diversity or intellectual skill set diversity between the founders. On the other hand, to wrap it back to the story, so you can wrap up the episode, it could be that there's another risk factor that we didn't articulate or let's say a lesson of the, we got a whole lot of lessons, like 12 lessons out. Maybe a 13th lesson is there's quite a cultural gap between retired Jewish guys from New York and like off the boat Chinese immigrants. Is like different worlds. And my instinct tells me that if you're doing business with someone that's from such a wildly different culture, like the expectations are in this subconscious way, just how you communicate, what you do, what you value, how you spend money on, how you document is just such a universe of difference. It might even be irreconcilable. So it might be that there's a risk factor to do business with people who are too similar to you. Like you don't need two CEOs. Two CEOs is a problem. You need difference like that. On the other hand, when it's two different, there's a whole other set of risk factors. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I would call that CEO, COO dichotomy, that's the visionary and the integrator in the traction language. You're going to love that book.
Oh, wait. He made the same point about dividing these two personality types? He stole my thunder. He stole your thunder.
He stole your thunder. I think that people who are different can certainly work together, but they have to have that imagination and empathy. And just like you said, they have to very clearly articulate the expectations and who's going to do what. And another good idea is to have outside arbiters. Like I always recommend that you have an outside bookkeeper and accountant, because have you ever heard of the triangle of fraud?
No, please teach me.
Oh, okay. The triangle of fraud is opportunity, need, and justification. So if you have, let's say, the manager of the restaurant who doesn't have anyone counting cash out of the register at the end of the day with her, then she could just pocket the money. There's nothing stopping her from taking.
So she has the opportunity.
She has the opportunity. The need is obvious what that means. And then justification, maybe she felt that she was entitled to this.
Yeah, these rich Jewish guys from New York are oppressing me and taking advantage of me. And
maybe she felt that they were not compensating her fairly, that she was doing more of the work than they were, that they shouldn't receive as much of the profit because of that. She might have had some reasons that I never knew about, or I'm just kind of imagining what that could be. But opportunity, need, and justification, that's where fraud happens. And so what I try to do in my work as a lawyer is eliminate that opportunity component by making sure that people, when they are doing business together, there are enough eyes so that you don't have any opportunity. And for instance, you've got to have 3 people at least who count out the registers in a restaurant. Why? Because 2 people can conspire, but a third person will keep everybody honest. And that way
it's harder. It's the more people you add, the harder it is for them to conspire.
Exactly. So you always have 3 people counting out the money. You always have a safe, where the money can be dropped. And then once a week, somebody who is an outsider is taking the cash to the bank so that there's no risk that someone can take the money without it being observed. Like the books are going to be supervised by someone outside of the company That way it's not possible for the same person to be counting the money and recording the money and depositing the money.
Out of curiosity, I've never heard of this triangle of fraud before, but it makes sense. Is this just an interesting concept that likely leads to fraud? Or, knowing that you're a lawyer, is this a legal concept? Like, if a judge that sees all three of those were there, like, legally, can a judge say, okay, it's likely to be fraud?
I think it's a business concept, really, not so much a law concept. In law, we have elements of claims, and fraud is a material statement that is made that is knowingly false, that causes someone to act and causes damages to that person. So
Wait. Actually, I'm going to write this down. This is interesting. Fraud is a material statement that is knowingly false. What are the other two?
Material statement. So, like, I have a swimming pool full of gold coins. This is not a true statement. I do not have a swimming pool full of gold coins, but I'm telling you, you do. And then if I know it's false, so it's got to be knowingly false. It's got to induce you to act. So I say, if you give me $10,000, I will let you swim in my swimming pool full of gold coins. Then you pay me $10,000 and then I disappear. That's fraud.
Okay. And so it's a material statement that is knowingly false that induces you to act.
Against your interest.
Against your interest.
So that's what literally you have to prove if you sue someone for fraud.
Super interesting. Sounds fun being a lawyer, except dealing with these old Jewish guys.
I wouldn't say it was just them, and like I hope it's clear that I have only love for my Jewish friends, and that there's no.
You are the one that's super clear and full of love. I'm the one that's making fun of my own group. So
what I want to make sure is clear is when you're doing business with anyone, regardless of the cultural background, as a lawyer, you have to protect yourself from your client, because you have a risk that you take on when you work for a client, because you have to put the client's interest before your own, and there are all these ethical duties that we are obligated to fulfill as lawyers. So we have to be extremely clear about what our clients' duties are to us also. And for instance, in my fee agreement, I have a whole section on the client's responsibilities that says things like the client must be truthful with the attorney. The client must communicate with the attorney. The client must provide documentation upon request to the attorney. Because, my job is to fight for my clients. To do that, I need to have all the information. And
absolutely,
if someone comes to me and misstates the facts, then that's not something I can work with, because I'll find out halfway through a lawsuit that the client lied to me, and I have to withdraw it if that happens, because I have a duty to the court of candor. So I can't violate my own duty if based on the clients having misstated the facts to me. So we always make sure we include that. And these are things we started doing because of the lessons from this horror story.
Wow. I love it. Words of wisdom to wrap up the episode on. Jane, it's been so much fun having this brainstorm with you, learning this story, learning about empathy, triangle of fraud, so much in today's learning. Thank you for your time.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
And everyone who's watched this episode, we hope you've made it to the end to see this, and we hope you've enjoyed it. as much as we have recording it. Until next time.
Cheers.